The smell of antiseptic was so strong it made my eyes water, but it couldn't cut through the awkwardness suffocating the hospital room. My wife, Clara Reed, who'd been in a car accident, seemed to have woken up with her wiring completely shot. She'd been repeating the same thing for days, a tiresome mantra. I've been given a second chance. She clutched my hand, tears streaming down her face like a broken string of pearls, her voice trembling. Leo, I'm so sorry. In my last life, I was a fool. I listened to all the wrong people, and I didn't just throw away your love. I was the reason you died hating me. You never forgave me, not even at the very end. Before she could finish, she slapped herself hard across the face, 3 sharp cracks echoing in the silence. She collapsed into gut-wrenching sobs. Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around her shaking shoulders. My gaze drifted over the company's board members, who had come to pay their respects. The shock on their faces was so thick you could build a wall with it. I mirrored their stunned expression, but under the hospital bed, I was mentally digging a tunnel out of there. Clara and I had been married for 5 years, a classic corporate merger. Our relationship was lukewarm at best. She was a textbook workaholic, a CEO to the core, whose only real hobby seemed to be coming home on time for the dinners I cooked. For 5 years, I'd managed her life outside the office, and to the outside world, we were a picture of civility. I'd assumed life would just drift on like this, placid and predictable, until that stormy afternoon when Clara's car went off the road. When I burst into her room at the hospital, her head was wrapped in bandages, and she was fighting like a caged animal. The 4-needle had been ripped from the back of her hand, and she was struggling violently to get out of bed. Get away from me. I have to go home. I have to find Leo. Don't touch me. It took 3 nurses to hold her down. I strode forward, a vein throbbing in my temple, and grabbed her wrist. Stop it. She froze, her eyes locking on mine. After a 2-second pause, those beautiful eyes went red. The next thing I knew, I was being yanked into an embrace, so tight it felt like my ribs would crack. Leo, you're okay. You're okay. Her voice was a ragged whisper, filled with the wild joy of someone who'd narrowly escaped disaster. I missed you so much. I pushed against her with all my strength, but it was like trying to move a brick wall. Clara, if you don't let go, I'm not going to be okay for much longer. I managed to choke out. The accident didn't kill you, but you're about to suffocate me. She finally loosened her grip, her face a mask of pure anguish, like an abandoned puppy. I pretended not to see it, instructing her to lie back down and apologizing to the nurses as they reinserted the 4. Once the room was quiet again, it was just the 2 of us. She leaned against the headboard, her eyes glued to me. When I went to the bathroom to wash my hands, I could hear her calling my name through the door, one call after another, more persistent than a street vendor at a farmer's market. I sat by her bed, methodically peeling an orange. She suddenly turned on her side, her gaze filled with a thick, syrupy affection I had never seen before. Leo, I miss you so much. My hand stilled, my brow furrowed. Had the accident given her brain damage? We'd known each other for over a decade, married for 5 years, and I had never once heard such saccharine nonsense from her lips. I reached for her forehead. Should I get the doctor? She grabbed my wrist, her eyes unervingly clear and certain. I'm not sick, Leo. I'll come back. She ignored the kaleidoscope of expressions I was sure were on my face and said with absolute conviction, I'm serious. I really came back. In my past life, I cheated on you. I trusted that snake, and I didn't just betray you. I let her humiliate you. When you were sick, I made you kneel in the rain. I shamed you in front of everyone. I even tried to force you to donate a kidney to her. I did so many terrible things. My face grew pale as I listened, but she plunged ahead. Later, you gave up on me completely. You got sick, and you died. She choked back a sob, lost in a painful memory. I was filled with regret. I looked for you like a madwoman. But you wouldn't see me. You wouldn't talk to me. I didn't even know where you were hiding. Leo, I really deserve to die. With that curse, she lost control again, slapping herself with both hands, tears and snot streaming down her face. As if on cue, a few senior executives pushed the door open to find a scene straight out of melodrama. Their normally ice-cold, stoic CEO curled in my arms like a helpless child, sobbing her heart out and mumbling over and over, I'm a horrible person. I plastered a look of shock on my face, gently patting her back while waving a hand at the door, signaling for them to come back another time. Beneath the thin hospital blanket, my toes were grinding into the mattress, trying to claw an escape route. An hour later, Clara finally calmed down, leaving a large, damp patch on my shirt. I glanced at her, my voice sharp. Did you get possessed by the spirit of a daytime soap opera star? She ignored me, clinging to my hand, her gaze so sticky it felt like it could be pulled into threads. Leo, I love you. You have to stay with me forever. I pulled my hand away and stood up to change. Yeah, I got it. As I turned, in the one place she couldn't see, the corner of my mouth lifted in a faint, silent smile. Clara was healthy, and she was discharged a few days later. Her body came home, but her soul was completely different. Before, this house was just a place for her to crash, a place to occasionally fulfill her wifely duties. Now, she followed me everywhere like a shadow. I couldn't even go to the bathroom without her standing guard outside the door like a sentinel. I wanted to scream. The 13th time I shooed her out of the kitchen, she clung to the doorframe, her eyes wide and pleading. Leo, the last thing you did before you died was make my favorite braised short ribs. Holding a spatula, I had the sudden urge to pry open her head and see if a giant, lovesick tumor had taken root. I could practically recite her list of past life sins by heart now. I pretended not to hear, focusing on the sizzling ribs in the pan. A pair of arms wrapped around me from behind. Warm hands rested on my waist, carrying the damp heat of a recent shower. Her chin rested on my shoulder, her breath ghosting over my ear, her voice a low murmur. Leo, I'm hungry. I glanced at her. Almost done. Go wait outside. Clara paid no attention. A flurry of hot, insistent kisses fell on my neck. Leo, I love you. Her clean, intoxicating scent enveloped me. I tried to push her away, my voice tight. The ribs are going to burn. Let them burn, she whispered with a reckless abandon. Leo, having you is enough. The words were barely out of her mouth before she clicked off the stove, grabbed my wrist, and half-dragged, half-carried me out of the kitchen and toward the bedroom. This version of Clara was passionate to the point of being feral. She was like a traveler dying of thirst in the desert, throwing herself at the only oasis in sight with a desperate, almost destructive hunger. As the world spun around me, I lifted a hand, my fingertips gently tracing the tiny, almost invisible scar behind her ear. A scar so faint, even she didn't know it was there. It had healed now, but I knew that just beneath that thin layer of skin lay a chip the size of a grain of rice. A chip that made her love me with unwavering conviction. 4 years ago, I'd invested in a biotech startup on the verge of collapse. Beyond their work on rare diseases, they were secretly developing a microchip that could influence memory and emotion. It didn't crudely alter or invent memories. Instead, it established a powerful psychological premise for the subject, infinitely amplifying a specific emotion. The chip would stimulate the brain, making the enhanced feeling feel utterly real, while the brain itself would blur and fill in any details that didn't align with the core emotion, creating a perfect, self-justifying narrative. Just like the rebirth Clara now believed in so fiercely, all she could remember was a tidal wave of guilt and a bottomless love for me. The specific details of that past life. The chip would weave them for her, seamlessly. In our 5 years of marriage, she had been rigid and uninteresting, emotionally distant, but at least there had never been another man. I was prepared to live with that. But starting last month, a stranger began appearing at her side. Lunches, private meetings, late-night calls. One night, I got up for a glass of water and saw her speaking softly in her phone, only to hang up in a panic the moment she saw me. So, the Ice Queen CEO could feel guilty when she was caught sneaking around. In the script I designed for her, I was the long-suffering victim who never fought back. But the real Leo Vance would never just hand over what was his. That perfectly timed car accident was just the opening act. Under the cover of her medical treatment, the chip was implanted behind her ear. Her memories were rewritten. From that moment on, her world would contain nothing but penance and a deep, abiding love for me. I know I'm not entirely right in the head. Growing up, everything in the world felt like stagnant water to me. Clara was the only exception. No one was going to take her from me. She could only be mine. Forever. I first met Clara Reed when I was 13. My stepmother was throwing a lavish 15th birthday party for her precious son, Caleb. It was a who's who of the city's elite. I was wearing a suit from 2 years prior, sitting alone in a small garden off the main ballroom. My fingers had just brushed against a butterfly when Caleb snatched it away. Leo, you look pathetic in that hand-me-down. He smirked, crushing the butterfly's wings between his fingers. I stared at the mangled remains on the ground. The butterfly was dead, its wings brutally torn. It looked just like all the other things Caleb and his mother had destroyed. My model kits, my books, the little projects I'd made that they'd tossed in the trash. I felt nothing. I just calmly calculated what I should put in Caleb's bed tonight. A dead rat? Or a live snake? The thought of his terrified face made a small smile escape my lips. Caleb, enraged, lunged at me, but his fist stopped short. He had seen Clara. At 15, she already had the makings of the Ice Queen CEO she would become. She wore a perfectly tailored dress and stood there in silence, the noise of the party seeming to freeze around her, leaving only her breathtaking beauty. Caleb eagerly tried to chat her up, but Clara just told him his mother was looking for him, her gaze never once landing on me. She remained where she was, not saying a word. I looked away from her, glanced at the butterfly's broken body on the ground, and lost interest. I turned and walked away. 2 months later, she found me again in a deserted corner of the school. She wore the same blank expression and handed me a small, palm-sized wooden frame. Inside, preserved and perfectly intact, was the butterfly I had caught. It was a specimen now. The frame fit perfectly in my hand. She said nothing, just gave it to me, and walked away. I stared at her retreating back, and quietly tightened my grip on the butterfly. Clara Reed, I thought, you're the one who walked right into my trap. The next morning, Clara emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in steam. Her robe was loosely tied, and water droplets traced paths down her skin, a silent, seductive invitation. My eyes were fixed on the faint pink scar on her left shoulder, and for a moment, I was lost in thought. Then she was on me, a warm, damp presence climbing under the covers and draping herself over me like a lazy cat. The wet ends of her hair tickled my neck. Are you a cat? I laughed, trying to push her away. She ignored me, burying her face in my neck, her voice husky with sleep. Leo, I love you so much today. Will you always stay with me? Ever since the accident, her first words upon waking were a declaration of love, as if she were trying to make up for 5 years of silence all at once. I ruffled the damp hair at the back of her head. As long as you love me, I'll be here. You have to remember you said that, Leo, she mumbled, nuzzling my neck with a stubborn affection. I agreed absently, my fingertips unconsciously tracing the scar on her shoulder. Does it still hurt? Her body tensed for a fraction of a second before she hugged me even tighter, as if trying to merge our bodies into one. It doesn't hurt. After half an hour of this, Clara finally left for the office, looking back 3 times before she was out the door. The moment her car disappeared, I called the lab. They confirmed that the data from Clara's chip was perfectly normal. I just hung up when my phone rang again. It was her, excitedly asking if I wanted to see a movie tonight. I gave a non-committal answer, entirely uninterested. Her voice immediately shifted into its familiar, penitent tone. Leo, before, every time you asked me out, I stood you up. Please, just give me a chance to make it right, okay? Listening to her earnest regret, I sighed. Fine. She hung up, satisfied. I thought for a moment, then dialed the lab again. Are you absolutely sure her chip hasn't been infected with some kind of virus? The script I programmed for her didn't account for every little thing. The chip's memory was limited. I had only implanted a few key representative events designed to maximize emotional response. The brain was supposed to fill in the rest. I just never imagined that the prim and proper Clara Reed had such a vivid imagination. After days of listening to her confessions, my ears were ringing. She had developed a terminal case of lovesickness. Before the movie, we had dinner at a trendy restaurant. As she cut her steak, she looked up at me. Our anniversary is next month. Do you want to go abroad? France? Norway? Or maybe see the northern lights in Iceland? Her eyes were soft enough to drown in. We've never taken a real trip together since we got married. Our honeymoon was... Clara was a notorious workaholic. The day after our wedding, she flew to Germany for a month to handle a crisis. By the time she got back, the moment had long passed. Subsequent anniversaries were usually spent with her working late, simply telling her assistant to order flowers and buy a gift as a routine acknowledgement of our marriage. Leo, she said, putting down her knife and fork and reaching for my hand across the table. Everything we missed before, we'll do it all now, one by one. After dinner, we arrived at the theater 10 minutes early. But as the movie started, the huge auditorium remained completely empty. I couldn't help but ask, isn't this movie supposed to be a blockbuster? I bought out the screening, Clara said with a soft laugh. In the dim light, her eyes were deep and focused. I only want to watch it with you. I turned her head toward the screen. It's starting. Be quiet. I wasn't really interested in the movie, but I found myself watching it intently. It was about a couple. The husband had short-term memory loss and forgot everything every day, while his wife spent each day trying to make him remember her and fall in love with her all over again. Maybe it was because I'd never experienced such a pure, resilient love, but a strange ache bloomed in my chest. I turned to look at Clara and realized she wasn't watching the screen at all. She was leaning back, her gaze fixed entirely on my face. The flickering light played across her profile, and I couldn't read the expression in her eyes. She leaned in close, her warm breath ghosting over my ear, her voice as light as a feather. Leo, if you forgot me 100 times, I would love you 101. I knew it was just a chip talking, just empty sweet talk. But this time, the retort died in my throat. My heart, in that instant, began to beat violently, wildly out of control, as if it existed only for her. For our 5th anniversary, Clara and I left for Europe. To make the trip happen, she'd worked like a machine, clearing her schedule for the next 6 months. At night, she'd be holed up in her study, hunched over maps and travel guides, planning every single detail. My only job was to be with her, to stay within her line of sight at all times. She was certifiably insane. I was lounging on the living room sofa, reading a novel, listening to the frantic tapping of her keyboard. Every so often, I'd look up. Clara would be staring at the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration, looking like she was handling a corporate takeover. So where are we going exactly? I asked. France, Germany, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway, she replied without looking up, her fingers still flying. I nodded. A name surfaced in my mind without warning. Caleb, isn't he still in Germany? The typing stopped. Clara turned, her eyes studying my face. Why do you ask about him all of a sudden? No reason, I said, looking back at my book. Just a thought. She watched me for a few more seconds before the sound of the keyboard started again. But now her gaze would occasionally drift over to me, tinged with an unreadable scrutiny. For some reason, the mention of Caleb left a ripple of unease in my gut that wouldn't settle. Not that it mattered. We hadn't been in contact for years. 5 years ago, the Vance family had been looking to expand its empire, and my father started vetting potential marriage alliances for Clara. Caleb's intentions were obvious, and he repeatedly begged his mother to make it happen. That woman, who once worked a diner counter in Queens, had only managed to claw her way into our family because she had a passing resemblance to my mother. A few years of luxury had made her greedy. At the time, she looked down on her Reeds. But Caleb was persistent, and she eventually brought it up with my father. My father's response was ambiguous. That night, I walked into his study with a chef's knife from the kitchen. I'm marrying Clara Reed, I said, the blade glinting under the lamplight. If it doesn't happen, we all go down together. My certifiably psychopathic father didn't even flinch at the knife pointed at his throat. He just waved a dismissive hand. Fine, get out. Later, the engagement was announced. It was me. Caleb and his mother raised hell, but I just watched their pathetic performance with amusement. She had been married into the family for a decade and still didn't understand my father. He had no time for petty tantrums. This was, after all, a man who didn't even shed a tear at his first wife's funeral and was planning his second wedding 2 months later. When throwing a fit didn't work, their revenge escalated. Adult tactics were far more insidious than tearing up clothes or a slap in the face. They drugged me at a charity gala, planning to have a few hired escorts take care of me. Too bad for them. The plan was amateurish. I saw it coming, and I made sure Caleb ended up with a spiked drink instead. When his mother burst into the hotel room with a crowd of guests, ready to catch me in the act, the sight of her own son, disoriented and making a fool of himself on the bed, twisted her perfectly maintained face into a mask of fury. She came after me, screaming, but by then, I was already in Clara's car. Caleb, having tasted his own medicine, couldn't show his face in New York anymore and was quietly shipped off to Europe. Not having him there to witness my wedding was a small, lingering regret. After he left, we lost touch completely. He didn't even come back for the funeral 3 years ago, when a fire at the family estate, a fire that made headlines for weeks, killed both his mother and my father. Sometimes I wondered if he had died quietly in some foreign country. Not that I cared enough to find out. His life or death meant nothing to me. Clara and I arrived in France a week ahead of schedule, planning to relax before heading north to Norway. The whole experience was so foreign it was jarring, a splash of color in my otherwise monochrome life. Clara, too, seemed to have shed a massive weight. She'd traded her severe, tailored power suits for matching outfits. For us, she had packed the bags herself, and I had no idea where she'd found so many different sets of couples wear. Each one was monogrammed with our initials, the style hovering somewhere between trendy and tacky. But strangely, I liked it. I'd gotten my wish and married Clara Reed, but romance? That was uncharted territory for me. It wasn't that no one was interested back in school. It was that, apart from Clara, the thought of dating anyone else bored me to tears. And I couldn't date her because she didn't like me. These past few days, walking hand in hand through foreign streets, resting on a bench whenever we got tired, occasionally being told by a friendly local that we were made for each other. It all gave me the absurd feeling that we were actually in love. My image of Clara was being reshaped. I always thought she was a block of ice, rigid and devoid of passion. From the moment I met her, she was always so serious, and in our 5 years of marriage, she'd maintained a careful, polite distance. But these past few days, she'd shown me a completely different side of herself. She was an amazing photographer. Every shot she took of me was vibrant and alive. She was fluent in several languages and had a surprisingly beautiful singing voice. One afternoon, we saw a street performer, and she impulsively went up and sang a song, accompanying herself on his guitar. She was almost always smiling, the Parisian sunset casting a golden glow on her relaxed features. The way she looked at me was as soft as a warm spring breeze, an intoxicating heat that made me want to drown in her gaze. "Leo, I'll love you forever," she whispered. Without warning, my nose stung and my eyes burned. I didn't want to say anything, but the words slipped out anyway. "Are you happy, Clara?" The smile on her face froze. In her eyes, which were usually filled with adoration, a storm of complex emotions erupted. Joy, grief, disbelief, all crashing into one another. A single tear escaped and fell silently onto the cobblestone street. My heart felt like it had been seared by that tear. I lunged forward, grabbing the collar of her shirt and kissing her with a raw, almost violent force. Clara's arms, when she hugged me back, were trembling. Her voice was raspy. "Leo." Whatever she was about to say was swallowed by a deafening roar that ripped through the air. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. The sharp crack of gunfire, like the devil's laugh, shattered the peaceful afternoon. Screams, cries, and the thunder of running feet exploded around us, tearing the calm to shreds. The chaotic crowd surged like a river breaking its dam, instantly sweeping us apart. My vision was a blur of panicked, fleeing figures. I pushed through the throng, desperately scanning for her. Clara. I saw her. She was fighting her way back toward me, against the tide of people. Her eyes were fixed only on me, filled with a reckless determination. But just a few feet behind her, the black maw of a gun barrel, cold and deadly, was aimed directly at her back. A terror so profound it shattered all reason exploded inside me. Time seemed to stretch, to solidify. All I could see was her running toward me, and the fatal black hole pointed at her. "No!" I screamed with every ounce of strength I had, my body moving faster than I thought possible. I launched myself forward like a bullet from a gun, throwing myself at her, my only thought to shield her with my own body. Thwomp! A dull, soul-shattering sound of impact. A searing pain erupted in my chest. The force of it stole my strength, and the world began to spin. Sound faded away. I couldn't hear Clara's heart-wrenching screams, couldn't hear the chaos around us. As my consciousness began to fray, the only thing I could hear were the words she had whispered to me for countless nights, clear as day, over and over. "Leo, I love you. I love you. I love you." My body crumpled, falling into a familiar, trembling embrace. With the last of my strength, I raised a blood-soaked hand and touched the spot over her heart. Through the soft fabric of her sweatshirt, I could almost trace the shape of the scar there, the one she got protecting me from Caleb's knife all those years ago. I tried to smile. "Clara." Blood filled my throat, my voice barely a whisper. "This time, it's my turn to protect you." Before the darkness took me, fragmented images flashed through my mind. I saw Caleb pouring dirty water on my bed, only to get bitten by the snake I'd hidden there. I saw my stepmother crying to my father, then secretly pinching my arm in spite. I saw my father's eternally cold, indifferent gaze. The final image was of my mother. She was wearing the soft cotton dress I remembered, smiling gently at me. Her ankles were slender and white, free of chains and scars. She stroked my hair, just like when I was little. Mommy said people who have someone to love can't come here. Her voice was soft as a feather. I reached out my small hand and clutched the hem of her dress with desperate finality. "I don't want anyone to love. I want to go with you, Mommy." She knelt to look me in the eye, her gaze full of a sad understanding. "Leo is a good boy. Good boys don't give up on the people they love so easily." She paused, her fingertips brushing my cheek. "Mommy knows you're happy when you're with her. Mommy wants Leo to always be happy." I shook my head stubbornly, my little hand gripping her dress tighter, as if it were our only lifeline. "I want to be with you. I'm always with you," she said with a gentle smile, a smile filled with the starlight of goodbye. "Every breeze you feel is me hugging you." She firmly, slowly, pulled her dress from my grasp and gave me a gentle push forward. "Go, my love. She's calling for you." I whipped my head around, but my mother's smiling figure was already blurring, fading like smoke in the wind, until she was gone. A vast terror seized me. I cried, trying to run back, to grab onto that fading light. A choked, heartbroken voice pierced the endless darkness and fear, calling my name over and over. Leo Vance. You promised. You said as long as I loved you, you would always be here. You can't leave me. Leo. It was Clara. My Clara. She was still waiting for me. Waiting for me. To remember her. The day I woke up, the sun was perfect. Through the half-open window, the sky was a pristine, washed-out blue, with clouds like cotton candy. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves outside and slipped into the room, playfully lifting the loose strands of hair on Clara's forehead. She had fallen asleep, slumped over my bed, her brow furrowed, even in sleep, as if she were carrying the weight of the world. I slowly lifted my weak hand, my fingertips just brushing her temple. She jolted awake, sitting up straight, her eyes filled with the fog of sleep and a lingering terror. Then our eyes met. I looked at her and managed a dry, cracked smile. My voice was hoarse but clear. Clara, it's a beautiful day. Her pupils contracted. The fog and terror vanished, washed away by a tidal wave of overwhelming, triumphant joy. Her beautiful eyes immediately filled with red, and tears welled up and spilled over, streaming down her face. Leo, she threw herself at me, hugging me so tightly I thought my bones would grind to dust. Her hot tears soaked through my hospital gown, burning my skin and stirring my long-dormant heart into a heavy, powerful rhythm against my ribs. You're finally back. You're finally. She sobbed uncontrollably, all the fear, the waiting, the despair of the past weeks erupting at once. I hugged her trembling body back with all my might, burying my face in the familiar, clean scent of her hair. Clara Reed, I said, my voice muffled and exhausted, but absolutely certain. I love you. Through the long, dark fog, I had finally found my way back to her, whole and complete. My princess. She was just as radiant as ever, a brilliant light on my lonely path. The fog had lifted. The road ahead was long, but thankfully we could walk it together. Clara's perspective the first time my father brought up arranging a corporate marriage for me. My answer was decisive. I'm not marrying anyone but Leo Vance. He studied me for a moment, his tone laced with a businessman's calculation. The family would prefer Caleb. He may not be a blood relation, but he's the favorite, and his mother is the current matriarch of the Vance family. Marrying him would maximize the benefits of the alliance. Before I could respond, he added, Caleb has made it clear he wants to marry you. As for Leo, Clara, he may not agree to this kind of arrangement. Don't complicate things. I fell silent. Leo, he'd forgotten everything. Would he really agree to a marriage based purely on business? As I was trying to figure out a strategy, my father took my silence as agreement. He stood up. I'll arrange a dinner with Caleb tomorrow. You two should. I won't see him. I cut him off, my gaze meeting his without flinching. The only person I'm going to marry is Leo Vance. Dad, you know me. No one can force me to do something I don't want to do. I paused, my voice calm, but unyielding. Or perhaps you should start considering a new heir for the company. At the time, my wings weren't fully grown, but I had already established a firm foothold within Reed Industries. Forcing me out would be a devastating blow to the family business. My father stared at me for a few long seconds, then turned and left the study without another word. While the marriage was still being negotiated, I went to the U.S. for a major project. When I returned, my father told me the engagement is in 3 months with Leo Vance. In that moment, a firework of pure joy exploded in my chest. So, he was willing. Even after forgetting everything that came before, he still chose me. That knowledge alone was enough to make me ecstatic. A month before the engagement, at a gala, I was trying to find him but got cornered by an important client. My mind was elsewhere, my eyes scanning the glittering crowd for him. When I saw him slip into a private lounge, I finally made my excuses and followed. As I entered, I saw him carefully pouring the contents of a glass into a small vial, tucking it into his suit pocket, and then heading upstairs to the hotel floors. He was crouched by a hotel room door, listening intently. The sight sent me back in time, to our school days, when I could never guess which corner he'd pop out from, grinning and grabbing my sleeve. Clara, let's walk home together. That lively, vibrant version of him had been gone for so long. When he backed away from the door and bumped right into me, for a second, I thought I was hallucinating. He pulled me into a fire escape, his eyes shining with a familiar, mischievous glint. Well, if it isn't my fiancée. Fancy meeting you here. I was about to speak when a cool hand covered my mouth. Shoot, don't make a sound. He tilted his head, listening to the commotion outside, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. I looked at him, and my heart melted. This is okay, I thought. He can forget all the bad things, even if it means forgetting me, as long as he has that light in his eyes again. The noise outside grew louder. I could clearly hear his stepmother's shrill accusations and a cacophony of shocked murmurs. He removed his hand, a satisfied smile on his face. What did you do now? I asked, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged innocently. Just gave him a taste of his own medicine. The stairwell was dim, lit only by the green glow of the exit sign. I looked at his animated face and had a sudden impulse. It's a beautiful night. Want to go for a drive? He took my hand without hesitation, his smile brilliant in the gloom. You got it. We're not going home tonight. Memo. After the chip failed, Leo has been in a coma for a month. The doctors tell me his will to live is dangerously low. After multiple consultations, the conclusion is always the same. The memory chip implanted in him was completely destroyed during the shooting in Paris. The moment he threw himself in front of you, the doctor explained with a sigh, the raw emotional energy from his own protective instincts completely overpowered and fried the chip's programming. In the face of genuine, primal human emotion, technology is fragile. I sit by his side, just as I have for countless days and nights, folding paper stars. The clear glass jar is almost full. I speak to his sleeping face, my voice a low murmur. The little stray cat you rescued and hid in the attic? A nice couple adopted her. She's as fat as a little pig now. The tiny umbrella you stuffed into my hand that one day. I still have it. It's in the glass cabinet at home, right next to the butterfly specimen. Your anniversary gifts. I picked out every single one myself. You always said I was boring, but when I saw that flicker of light in your eyes as you opened them, it made everything worth it. The braised short ribs you make. They're the best thing I've ever tasted. Leo. My voice catches, my fingertips tracing the back of his cool hand. I really want to have a future with you. The glass jar refracts the sunlight, casting rainbows on the wall. I take a newly folded star and drop it inside. It's almost full. I whisper to my sleeping love, making a promise. When the jar is full of stars, you'll wake up. Okay.